Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the Alt-ernative podcast. We today have a special guest with us, another fellow YouTuber. I will leave his name, description, channel link, everything in the description below. But I'd just like to welcome you all to Carl. He runs the Debate Me channel. Carl is currently going through a problem around the eviction crisis, which he's going to go into right away. Carl, what's going on there with the eviction crisis and how's it affecting you exactly?
So the short story is that basically during the COVID situation, our government, in an attempt to, this is the message. This is what they claim. In an attempt to keep people off the street, to address homelessness because of people that were losing their jobs and things like that, they came up with this eviction moratorium, which basically kind of made it, I guess it kind of banned evictions. Yeah, evictions were basically banned to some degree for some time. And otherwise they were made very, very difficult. But as a result of that, what happened is you have people like me who are I'm just a normal guy. I'm not a billionaire, right? I actually have to work for a living, and I'm under the small landlord umbrella. And I just recently purchased a home, and I have two of my tenants that are not paying. They haven't paid me rent in 6 months. And these types of policies are allowing them to do that. So basically, I've purchased a home, beautiful home, great part of town. And I essentially have two squatters living in my house who are living, well, because they're not working. They're living in a nice house. They got a nice view. But meanwhile, I'm living as a squatter. And we'll get into that. But essentially, I have this house with this massive mortgage. The idea of a multifamily is basically it's a business, right? You are going to purchase a house that is larger than you need and basically share parts of the house with other people through the mechanism of renting, right? But just like any business model, you have expenses, right? And you're supposed to make a certain amount of revenue first to cover your expenses and then hopefully make an additional profit. But instead, it's all liability, right? So I'm maintaining this house, paying this crazy mortgage, and not being compensated for it. And there's really nothing that I can do. And the situation is actually even worse than that, because I have one of these people who is wreaking havoc for the entire building and for the entire block and the city. And we're all like subservient to this guy. So what I mean is, he's home all day, doesn't go to work, and he is being a nuisance to everyone. Like, there's trash all on his deck. He doesn't take out the trash when the trash day comes, so he allows the trash to pile up. So this is stuff that brings like rodents and stuff like that. You have another tenant that's living there that's working hard every day and paying his rent and has to come home and look at trash because this guy has left trash all over the place. This guy's also, he's smoking in his apartment and things like that. So basically, there's all these odors that are permeating the entire building. You go all the way to the top floor and you're smelling stuff that's coming from this one unit. So the entire building is inhaling whatever it is that he's smoking. They're looking at his trash, right? Sometimes he's playing like loud music that's going into other people. So everyone's annoyed with him, right? But then it's not just within my home. I actually just met a renter next door, and I spoke to him, and he's annoyed. So here's a guy who lives in a different house next door, and he's like, every time I see the trash out there, I'm just like, why won't they just bring it back? So you have a block. It's a nice block where people are really, really friendly. It's very, very community centric. Like, I've been living where I lived before for 10 years, and I only know people living in the house that I was living in. Here, I know so many neighbors. Like, I know people by first name basis. There's one neighbor who actually bought flowers for people on the block. Like, that's the kind of area it is. Like, she just went out and bought flowers and like sent this like nice message. So very, very, it's almost like a story, a fairy tale type of thing. But then we have this hidden, sort of darkness within my home. The only home where we've seen police come to on the block, right? It was actually shooting in my basement. There is blood spatter all over my door, all over my steps. I think the hole at the bottom of the step is actually from a bullet. So, and this is regarding one of the people that are living in my house. Apparently, they had some kind of domestic thing with an ex-boyfriend, and he came in there, and I guess he was trying to kill her. And then I had another tenant who was like a one of these let's just say she loves her guns, and she had to come out, and it was a whole situation. So I right. So in this nice, friendly area, right? My house is the house that the police are coming to. And also one of the, I don't want to say too much, but let's just say a family member of someone living in my house stole a car belonging to not just any neighbor, but the neighbor that I told you about earlier, the really, really super, super nice, super friendly, would give the shirt off her back type. I mean, I know they say that kind of expression, but this is the kind of woman who would actually do that kind of thing. Like there was a young kid who, and I gotta be careful what I'm saying, but I don't want to give out too much information, but let's just say there was a kid who died in the area, and it was a sad circumstance. It was due to neglect. And she felt so like bothered by that she actually went and held like a vigil at his house. You know what I mean? Like bringing flowers and stuff like that. And that's whose car, on a neighborhood that we don't have much crime, right? Now, there's other parts of the neighborhood that does have crime issues, but I just happen to be in a part of the area that is actually really, really nice. Everyone's super friendly, and we don't really have much crime. But then here's the first big crime happening, and it's somebody in my house. And the big thing is that I'm powerless to do anything about it. But in terms of the what's the word, the havoc that's being wreaked, it goes beyond even what I'm telling you. So all of the people living in the house are dealing with this one guy. There's another person who's not paying, but at least that person is kind of like, they just get kind of noisy sometimes, but they're not like messing with other people like this guy is. So he's messing with people in the building. People on the block are annoyed by him, but he's also frustrating the city, because what he does is he will call up the city and make bogus claims about like, oh, he's freezing. I have him in there and it's cold. There's a heat issue, right? And then when the city shows up, he doesn't let them in, right? So you're claiming that you're down there freezing. The city comes, and the thing is, the way things are set up, he has all the power, right? If I don't do anything, like if I don't provide a trash can, if I don't provide heat, if I don't provide hot water, right? If I have stuff blocking the hallway, that's like a fire hazard, he can pick up a phone and same day service. People will come out and they will get on me. They will find me. I can even go to jail for something trivial. I think I forgot what it was. I think actually the fire hazard stuff. Somehow like it could escalate to jail. I mean, to think about, so someone living in my home leaves things in the hallway that's a fire hazard and refuses to remove it. I can get fined for the thing that they're doing, and I can actually go to jail. Now, I imagine it's hard to get to the escalation point, but the fact that that's on the table, right? But the way that the city is being messed with is, again, he calls them up, they show up, he doesn't let them in. So now you're spending, this is money, right? We're paying tax dollars to pay the salaries of these workers who are there, who are supposed to be helping people who need help. And they take time out of their day to respond to this call, drive out there. Guy says he needs, I mean, what if it was a legit thing, right? Some poor person is in there freezing, right? I mean, it's good that we have people to take care of them. Like, maybe I'm some like slumlord or whatever, right? Help these people. They don't have the resources. And I'm for that, right? But then you show up and you don't let them in. And then as soon as they leave, he comes, I see him on camera, he comes out, short pants and a t-shirt. Right? Now, I'm a person who, I've done well for myself. I mean, I didn't come from money always, but I've done well for myself. I don't walk around in shorts and a t-shirt in the wintertime because I'm not trying to waste money like that. I'm not trying to crank up my heat to a level to where I'd feel comfortable. So, I mean, to be comfortable dressed like that. So I will dress like this. Maybe I'm gonna wear like a hoodie or something, a long sleeve. I'm not gonna be like a jacket and a hat or anything, but I'm gonna wear more seasonally appropriate clothing. This guy is so comfortable, shorts and a t-shirt. I send the photo to the city inspector guy, and I say, listen, this guy is a fraud. Look at him. He's not. What he's saying is not true. And you would think that they would just realize he's a fraud and drop it. No, they still want to entertain. And this is how it's set up. Everything is set up in favor of the tenants. And as a homeowner, it's like, we don't matter, right? So even though someone is clearly being fraudulent, they will still entertain it. So what did I do? Oh, we're going to come back and we're going to bring a building person to do some inspection. And I'm panicking because I'm paying this big mortgage, not getting paid rent. So my credit is like being destroyed. I'm running on fumes financially because I can't afford it. I can't afford to pay this mortgage and maintain this huge house without rent coming in. So the idea of them coming and finding me or saying I got to change this or change that or whatever, like that's terrifying. Like, where am I going to find money? And house, something could be $3,000, $5,000 just for one item, right? So I'm terrified. I'm like, oh my goodness, whatever. I'm panicking. And then the guy comes the next day. I'm watching on camera to see like what's going to happen. 2 minutes later, he's gone. So I'm like, how could he do an inspection in 2 minutes? So the city guy came with a building inspector. Those two people, and they were left in 2 minutes. I'm like, what is going on? So I call him up. I say, hey, what's going on? He wouldn't let us in. These people came to my house, I think 3 times in a week for nothing, right? They come, he doesn't want to let them in, right? He's coming to the door in shorts, complaining about he's got problems or whatever. So I said to them, listen, I'm telling you, he is playing you guys for a fool. Like, he's playing games. And they're like, yeah, we see that. And then they said they're going to drop it. So fortunately, that ended. That didn't go escalate any further. Because I'm sure they could find something. Just like when the police pull you over, they could find something where it's like, oh, this is supposed to be this or whatever. And it's like, they would really want to jam you up, they can. So I don't need someone coming around, poking around and like finding something and I gotta go whatever. So, but the point is, he's also wreaking havoc on the city because think about how these workers feel. I'm sure they're not getting paid that much money. So you're working for the city as an inspector, a plumber. I'm sure you're not living a life of luxury. You're on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of income. And here you have this person who is using you, right? Using you as like his henchman, right? I'm going to call you up just so I can like stick it to the landlord, like playing games, right? I mean, that's so disrespectful to them, right? And they have no choice. Like the way the laws are set up, the way the rules are set up, when they get these calls, they have to respond to them. Right. And so he's wasting money of the city. He's disrespecting, in my view, the workers. And I've talked to these people, and I was terrified because I felt very sort of negative in terms of like, them being against me, thinking I'm like a slumlord or whatever. Like I felt honestly isolated. So I felt very like anxious in terms of like their perspective. Like they're like, oh, you're evil, whatever. But I've talked to these guys. I speak to them respectfully and honestly and transparently. And I'm actually pleasantly surprised that they're actually very understanding. Like they get it. And I guess there's other people that are playing these games. So they're aware of these types of tricks that be played, but they're stuck. These are the rules. So they have no choice but to be sort of pawns of, I'm going to call what it is, parasites like these. You have people who need the help, who are poor, who are struggling, who have little means, who need help, right? And then you have people like this who are parasites, right? Because I'll give you an example. This guy literally throws litter in my lobby on camera. So he knows the camera's there, and he just throws it down. And I ask him, could you please pick that up, that thing that you threw down, right? Refuses to do it. So you're home all day, you're living in the nicest part of town, you don't pay any rent. I don't even think he's paying for electricity, right? And you can't just open your door. I mean, that's kind of silly because he threw it there intentionally, obviously, right? It's not like he left it there by accident. So I'm actually trying to think rationally, like, oh, it's so hard to just open your door. No, he meant to do that. He's like giving me the middle finger, right? He's like, F you. right? You think this is your house? This is my house. That's basically what it is. It's like he's taken over my house. I have no recourse. Like the only thing that he can't do is if he tries to like punch me or he comes out with a gun, like he has to go way above and beyond. Otherwise, he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to take his trash out. He can leave stuff in the hallway. He can just be a nuisance to everyone. And we all just have to we're also submissive. That's not the word I'm looking for. Subservient rather to him. Like he is the king. A few months after I bought the house, he said to me, "Hey, if you want to sell the house, I know a guy who might buy it." Let me tell you something. I'm probably the fourth owner in 6 years of the house. This guy, to my understanding, has not paid rent in 6 years. I believe yes. I believe that he basically has taken over the house. So he gets in there, he plays these games, right? Owners get frustrated and they sell, and that resets the clock. So for example, when I bought the house, there was an eviction going on with this guy, but the evictions don't carry on to the next owner because I think it's a matter of what's the word? There's a legal term where you have to have not damages, but like I can't sue. Like if my sister gets hurt by something that her company does or at a job, I can't sue the company because I'm not the one who got hurt. She has to sue them, right? So I forgot the term, but it applies here. The person who was owed the rent, who has something to sue about, is the previous owner. So since that owner sold the house, I think that just gets dropped. But regardless of what happens with that, I've got nothing going when I bought the house. So that means I need to start a new process, right? And in this country, you're entitled to a certain amount of days based on how long you've lived at a property. So in this case, because I've been there for years, it's 90 days. So every owner that comes in and has to start a new process, they get another 90 days. Not to mention the months and months of the owner trying to like resolve this. It's like, I got this guy who's not paying, I got to get him out. And you go through the courts and it's back and forth and all this nonsense. And then he's just being a nuisance and it's frustrating. And then eventually you lose so much money that what they do is they pass it on to the next sucker. So what you do is you put the house on the market and then you kind of fib a little bit about what's happening in terms of the rent and stuff. And, when you ask certain questions, there's a delay on the answer, just play little games. And then that person signs the contract. Oh, good luck. Have fun. Right. So I'm obviously speculating. I wasn't there for the previous owners, but this is based on what I'm experiencing now. I think that's what's been happening. The owners come in, they try whatever to get the guys out. And then after a while, they get frustrated, they give up, put it on the market. The next person buys it, same thing. Because the last owner bought the house and only was living there for, not living there. They only had the house for a year, right? They literally bought the house a year ago and already they're selling it. And I know that a big frustration that they had, unfortunately, there's a cop car that pulled up. Unfortunately, I know some of the stuff in progressive media goes a little bit overboard, but you do need to pay attention because you never know what kind of cop or what he's up to, right? That is, they may exaggerate, but there is a reason that I'm talking to you and I see a cop. I shouldn't just keep talking to you. I should like look and see like what's happening. We're good. He's gone anyway. But yeah, So I think that's kind of what's been happening. And I lost my train of thought. But he had it for a year. I know he was frustrated with this whole rent thing. He wasn't honest with me, so I bought it. My understanding when I bought it was they had pending eviction. So worst case scenario might be 3 months or something. I would just kind of rough it, ramen noodles or whatever for a few months, and then I would get them out, and then I would slowly recover and then move forward. I had no idea about how bad things are, and I guess we should talk about that. How bad are things? Like, what do these laws actually state, right? So what's the real thing that's been going on? There was a program created. Well, first of all, you had the eviction moratorium, which they kind of like banned evictions. So that's pretty clear what that did, right? You couldn't evict someone because of that moratorium.
And when was that passed? When was that law passed?
That was I don't remember, but that would have been like 2021 maybe.
And this was set up purely for the pandemic to protect tenants
Yeah,
during the
because
pandemic.
of the pandemic. Right.
Yeah.
But the problem before, I wasn't a homeowner then, so I didn't get the full perspective. But I did. While I was happy that they did this because I realized that there were people that were going to be left behind. Um, and I ironically, because you talk to a typical, let's call it online progressive, and they would look at me as some kind of capitalist savage or whatever. But I, again, I don't come from money, right? So I know what it's like to not have, and to wonder about like what bill you're gonna pay and which one you're not gonna pay, and running from phone calls. You got a phone call, anonymous number. You're like, is that some debt collector? You know what I mean? So I appreciated them providing the support for people who might need it and struggle because of the pandemic. But I did think to myself, but what about the landlords? Right? I mean, they got a mortgage. Like I said, when you're doing that, you need to be, if you're gonna freeze the rent, you need to freeze the mortgages as well.
Yeah, because what they're doing is going to have a repercussion on something else, and that's if this didn't even happen and someone mentioned this to me, the first thing I would think of is, well, how the landlord's not going to get the money. So where's the package of money for the landlord in this situation? And
Yeah, it's like you're running a business, your expense is your mortgage and obviously maintenance of the property. But if you're not getting that rent to pay your mortgage, then how there's a massive gap there where you're just left with a mortgage liability whilst the tenants aren't paying any rent.
It's almost in some way a super simplistic analogy. Like you have some people who are homeless who need certain medical supplies, and then you come up with this plan that you're gonna go. There's a local hospital. And you're just gonna take it from there and give it to these homeless people. And you're like, this is great that you're gonna do that. But then realizing the full logistics of it, you're like, wait a minute, but what about the people in the hospital that need those supplies? Because it's not like it's extra supplies. It's like they're needed. But the way it's thought of is like it's tunnel vision. It's just there's these homeless people that need the medical supplies, and the hospital has it, and you give it to them. Great, this is wonderful. Meanwhile, there's patients in the hospital that are like, "Hey, where's our medicine?" And no one's talking about them. There's no focus on them. It's just like, oh, the homeless people, they need it. And my thing is, let's help the homeless people, but let's not do it where it's like I'm gonna sink these people to save those. So can we meet halfway to where, right? So maybe we do some kind of rationing system where we look into the hospital usage, and it's like, do we really need to use as much of these supplies? Some of these patients actually don't need this, and there's alternatives. Like, tweak it to where the patients in the hospital are getting taken care of, and you're just taking from the excesses, right? And then you take those excesses and you give to the homeless. So the homeless are getting help, and then the hospital's getting taken care of. But no, the mentality was, we just got to help the renters, and they do the rental program, which is great. But then it's like they don't talk about the homeowners. And please remind me, we have to talk about to me, the American progressive mindset of the way they think about the poor versus the middle class and class warfare. We've got to talk about that. But I want to first talk about the program. So the moratorium was the eviction, stopping evictions. The thing that was really the thorn in my side was something called ERAP, which most people probably don't even know about. It's the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. That program has to be one of the most horrific programs that I've ever heard about. Such a savage and disgusting. I mean, I've never seen something in my life. On the surface, it sounds good. Like if I were like an online, like a progressive influencer, I could really sell it very well to a progressive audience as like, this is so great and it's going to help all these homeless people and whatever, because there is a good side to it. And fundamentally, it sounds good in theory. So here's the basic thing, right? This program actually does exactly what we said the other one should. Remember we said take care of the landlord? That's what this program on the surface is supposed to do. This is what it does. It basically makes it almost impossible to evict someone. So if you're poor and you can't pay your rent because of COVID or whatever, like you get to stay in your home and not get kicked out. Your landlord can't kick you out for non-payment. It specifically addresses eviction based on non-payment. That's not the only reason, but that's that's the main thing that it's there for. So it basically says, if I want to evict someone and the basis is that they are not paying the rent, they can't do it. I can't do it if someone's in that program, right? And the program is supposed to also take care of the landlord. So the thing is, I can't evict them, right? And the government's going to come in and pay the rent on behalf of the renter. Sounds good, right? That's what you're supposed to do, right? Right, but what's the problem? Again, this is the thing with tribalism. If a left-wing channel would probably tell you about that side of it, and it sounds great. And if I heard this, I would be like, that's awesome. That's what they should have been doing. That's what the moratorium was a failure. This is really great. Here's the problem. They didn't have the money. But yet they still put in protections. So you have a thing that says you can't evict someone because they're in this program that's supposed to pay the rent for them. And you don't have the money to pay the rent for them, but you're still going to allow them to live for free anyway. So it's almost like it's like a evil genius thing, right? Because on the surface it sounds good, but the reality is it's doing the same thing as the moratorium. You still have a situation where you have people that are allowed to not pay the rent, and you still have the landlord that's not being taken care of, because it doesn't matter that there's money that's allocated, whatever. It's not, if it's not being given out, like my mortgage doesn't wait. Every month the mortgage has to be paid. So my thought process is, if you don't have the money for this program, you can't do the program, right? You can't have a program that's supposed to pay the rent and you don't have the money to pay the rent, and you're just going to leave the protections like what? But they were doing that. So they had this program and landlords weren't getting paid. I mean, not totally, like some of them were getting paid. It was like all over the place. I remember you probably saw in the news, they said something like 90% of the funds were not distributed. I think this falls into part of that, to where government corruption, whatever the issue was, bottom line is a bunch of homeowners were not getting paid. Now, the program gets worse. This is so sick, the way that this thing is set up. And you wouldn't know this. Like, I did the research to find this out. I did a lot of digging. I looked at previous court cases and I learned about this stuff. The way that the law is written, if I accept a dime of this money, I'm making a 12-month commitment. So, and it's kind of weird because the program seems like on the surface, it doesn't really allow you to evict someone, but by you accepting money, it kind of more solidifies it even more, right? Because they say from the period of time from the first check is received for the next 12 months, you can't increase the rent and you can't evict them. So you have someone who, maybe taking advantage of the program that's being a nuisance, like my situation or whatever. And this is why I think it's sick. So you have someone like me who's desperate. I'm running on fumes. I'm running into a lot of my credit because I don't have the cash to pay the mortgage by myself. So I really need the money. And then, like a dog that's chained up and starving, you dangle this like red meat in front of me. I'm starving and I'm chained up. I can't get it. And you're just like, dang, look at this juicy meat. Like, oh, this money is here. Come get this money. But in the analogy with the dog, the meat has poison in it. So it's like, you really want it because you're really hungry, but you also know, like, if you bite this thing, you're going to die because it's got poison in it, right? So the same thing. If and when the money becomes available, you touching it is committing you to another 12 months of a scenario where, like I said, you're abandoned. If you have a normal tenant that's just like they're struggling financially, then that's fine. Because 12 months, whatever. This was your tenant. Like, these are tenants I inherited. Let's say it's somebody that you rented to, right? So you had a normal, regular relationship. They lost their job. They're struggling. 12-month commitment. Again, on the surface, it sounds good. That's fine. I wouldn't have a problem with that. If one of my tenants that I brought on ran into a difficulty and they needed the help, I'm not worried about that. But the problem when you create a system like this is when you have, people like what I have, who are just awful people, you enable them to really, you know what I mean? Like they're going to be there for another year of being like a boss where they can do whatever and I can't do anything. So it basically forces you that even if the money becomes available, you don't want it, right? So you're forced to like, no, I don't want that. Like that's like blood money or something. Like, no, I don't want a dime, right? Even though you need the money. Like that to me is so sick. Like you have someone that's struggling and they need the money, and it's like you can't touch it.
So if you accept some of this money, you're stuck with this bad tenant you've got for another 12 months. You're committed to keeping this tenant. Yeah.
A year. And it's already almost been a year, so that's 2 years.
So what process are you currently going through? Are you going through any process to get rid of this tenant?
Right. I am. So here's another side of it that is really, it just shows how broken like our country is right now. And this is stuff that I never knew about. I know a lot of people don't know about this. When you're a normal person like me, yes, I'm high income, but we got to understand this class war stuff. You've got the 99% of which I'm part of, and you've got the 1%, right? The 1% is so far and above, like it's not even remotely close to the rest of us, that even if you're making like $300,000 a year, like you're poor, right? Compared to a half a billionaire, like a 500 billion guy, and you're like 300,000 a year, like after taxes, like what was that, 200,000, 150? You know what I mean? That's nothing, right? And the thing about it is, the 99%, we have to work for a living, right? I don't have a rich dad. Like I'm at risk of homelessness as well, right? That's what's looming. Because if I foreclose, I put all my money in this house, right? That's the thing. For a normal person, even as a high income person, I don't have the funds to buy a 4-family house without squeezing myself to the limits. I had to use a special low down payment program, which means I have to pay a very high mortgage insurance, which is, I think it's like $1,200 a month or something ridiculous just for the insurance, because it's this low down payment thing. It's really hard to get a property that qualifies for it. So, you know, it's even you basically hire an attorney to do paperwork, right? You'll pay $500, $800, maybe $1,000, and that's what you get for that paperwork. They file your stuff in court. They will show up in court for you, but there is no like tactics and like, let's look at the previous legal, like that stuff you see on Hollywood, like where they're like looking at previous cases and here's an angle. We're going to use this angle and there's a loophole. There's none of that, man. They're just filing the paperwork, and then they can have like, 20 clients, because they're not really doing any work. Really, it's just like filling out paperwork, submitting it, showing it up for the court date, right? So basically, for normal people, even someone who's call me upper middle class, it's hard to find good legal representation, because a lot of the guys that are more affordable, they're very dishonest. So long story short, it took me 3 months just to find an attorney who even knew the basics of the very law that we're trying to challenge. Now think about how disgusting that is. Now they come up with a new law. It's been a year in place, right? The restrictions on evictions, blah, 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 right? After a year, I knew more about the law and the exceptions and ways to challenge it than all the attorneys I saw in the first 3 months. Now think about it for a second. What have they been doing for the last year? Because other landlords have been trying to do evictions, that have been paying these guys money to do evictions. If in a year they don't know, like there's only 2 or 3 exceptions to the law. One of them applies to me. If you want to live in the property, if it's 4 units or less, right? 4 units or less, and the owner wants to live on the property, there is an exception that allows you to evict, right? That's the one good thing that they did, which is so like, that's the right thing to do. You're saying This is a person, it's your property, you purchased the property, and you want to live in there. And for us, the court, to stop someone from being able to live in their own home, that is too far. So what they do is, if you're like an investor, right, who you have a home and you purchase another one as an investment, then they're like, we're going to take care of the tenant, right? But they say if you want to live there, that's an exception. So that's one of the only two exceptions, right? And it's not complicated. It's pretty simple. 4 units or less, and the owner wants to occupy immediately or something like that, right? 3 months. Every attorney I spoke to wasn't aware of this. I would speak to the attorneys and they would tell me stuff that was incorrect because I was reading. I had to become my own attorney. I'm sitting here. Listen, I signed up for a legal services thing, and that's another thing that's messed up. They limited, minimum contract was 2 years. So I had to sign up for 2 years just to get access to these court cases. It's a legal service. $100 a month. They required me to sign a 2-year contract, right? And why am I even doing this, right? In a normal world, I should be able to just hire an attorney and have them do their jobs. But no, I have to fend for myself. So I had to sign up for this program, and I'm like an attorney. I read through so many cases, and I had like a spreadsheet of like previous cases and like quotes from what the judges were saying and all these different things. And I'm like being like a legal aid or whatever. So I had a lot of familiarity with the laws and stuff. So I would talk to an attorney, big shot attorney, charging a lot of money, and have them tell me stuff that's incorrect. And I'm like, wait a minute. You can't, I said that you can't do that. The law specifically states that blah, 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 blah. How am I telling an attorney the law? Like, I don't have any legal experience. I don't have an aptitude necessarily for that. I don't have any background in it. All I did is I have comprehension skills. I can read, right? And I have the, the motivation, because I'm in a crisis. I need to figure things out. So I'm like, all right, the attorneys are not trustworthy. I'm going to go and read stuff and learn. I'm going to see how much I can help myself and go as far as I can, so that when I go to the attorney, I'm not such like an idiot that they can take advantage of, right? So 3 months to find one attorney that at least knew the law. The bar was so low at that point that I was so excited that he just knew the law. He hasn't done anything impressive, right? He seems like a cool guy. And I noticed, that's one thing I noticed, like, don't get caught up in personality. It's nice that the attorney is like friendly and stuff and, you know, conversational. That's irrelevant. You want to know about his ethics, right? His work ethic. You want to know about his case history, how good he argues cases in court and that kind of thing. But he seemed friendly and he knew the law. And compared to all the other attorneys who didn't even know the law, the basics of the law, I was like, man, this is amazing, right? I'm about to dump this guy because he's not doing anything. It's like I said, what you get as the 99%, what you can afford to get, is the paperwork. So he's another paperwork guy. His only big thing was that he at least knew the law. But for example, I will send him an email or contact him and say, hey, I'm going to go and talk to the tenant about the eviction thing, and this is what I'm going to say, whatever. No response. I'm not an attorney, but I know enough to know that if you're an attorney that's going to represent me in court and you're going to try to do an eviction, any interaction that I have with a tenant can hurt your case potentially, right? So as an attorney, I would never want you to tell me you're going to go talk to the tenant and me not contact you to at least give you some tips of like, don't say this, don't say that. No response before I had the talk or after. He has never commented at all. And that's in general. Like, things are happening. Like, I had to call the police not too long ago. He's been making like sort of like veiled threats at me. Like, there's the guy, like middle finger on the camera. Like, I asked him politely, like, I keep telling him, like, can you take the trash out? Right? He won't do it. So he gets annoyed. He comes home and he looks in the camera and he's like, F you, mother effer. Like, he's cursing me out. He's living not paying the rent. He's making so many people's lives miserable. And for me to ask him to do what everyone else on the block is doing, take your trash out, I'm the mother effer, right? So I tell the attorney stuff like this, no comment, no nothing, just silence. I haven't heard anything from him in weeks now, right? So that is what you deal with, and it's I gotta tell you, I've never felt so isolated because most people are not they're not doing this, they're not in this business, so they don't understand it. I didn't understand it myself before how things go down. So a lot of like regular people, they don't really fully get it, and then you're competing with narratives from media, right? Media, they like to focus on, because you do have like really bad landlords. They're like slumlords. There are people who like super greedy and they try to crank up the rent, right? So with all that narrative and a lack of context, I got to tell you, man, I don't know where your politics lie. I mean, I'm as independent as you can get. I personally, I reject the American left and right, and the center. My view is I feel like the centrists are kind of clueless. Like with the stuff that's going on in this country, if you're like in the center, just kind of like, oh, you want to go too extreme, to me, you're like clueless. But I don't fully blame you, because you're probably watching centrist media, and that's why your worldview is such as it is. But I look at the conservatives, and I'm just like, what are you guys doing? Like they're just insane. And then look at the left in this country, and it's like they at least talk about things that I feel are they talk about important things. They talk about healthcare and whatever, but they're so unserious about it. Like it's like the people, the loudest voices, they're content creators. They're online, and it's all about the content. They just sitting there and trying to get those clicks. They don't seem to really understand or really care to understand the things that they're talking about. So, and even when I search for information, so I say, I'll Google. You might try it. I don't know what you get, but I get in a situation where I say, what do I do if I have a tenant tenant refuses to take out the trash? What should I do? I swear, 90% of the time, whenever I search for stuff to help me, like what should I do if a tenant's doing X, Y, and Z, 90% of the time or more, the results I get are tenant perspective. They're like, what to do if your landlord isn't. I swear, I search for what to do if the tenant is such and such, and I literally get a bunch of links saying, if your landlord refuses to fix something, what you can do is da-da-da. I'm like, are you serious? So you feel like you don't exist. Like it's hard to find information to like what I do. Regular people, they don't get it. And then you have these two tribes. That one tribe on the conservative side, they're more kind of they're against all these government programs and its handouts and whatever. So actually, I'll get sympathy from them, right? Because I'm like a poster child for the stuff that they love to harp on. It's like, see, this is what these government programs do, right? So I'm not down with that. I support the government programs. I just say do it the right way. But the whole perspective on the conservative side is just to, like, if you come with a government program, let's find one wrong thing about it, and let's just paint it as like, oh, it's not going to work, right? So if they say, let's make minimum wage $15 an hour, right? And let's say in theory that this could work very well. On the conservative side, they'll find anything at all that to diminish it, and then they'll harp on it. So let's say, for example, they'll say, oh, what about in a place where $15 an hour is like $30 to them because the cost of living is lower? And then they just keep talking about that. So the point is not like, let's do it the right way. It's, let me tell you how this program sucks. As all government programs suck, because government programs suck and government just needs to stay out of our way and we need freedom and whatever. Like, that's the perspective. And then on the left, they will support these programs, but again, it's an unserious thing. So what do I mean by unserious? So it's very easy for me as a corrupt politician in a Democratic Party to go and suggest something like, for example, this rental assistance program or whatever, and put it out there and say, we got to keep people at home, right? And you can get a lot of people on the left like motivated, and they'll push this message out, but they won't give it a critique. They won't actually examine it and see like any flaws, right? So you have a bad faith attack from the conservative side. Like, conservative side will put out something that's bad faith, and the left-wing media, they love to attack that. That's easy. Like, oh, they're being dishonest because they're making it seem like da-da-da-da, and then they put their video out, and then their left-wing audience is like, make them better, right? And then we find additional flaws, and let's keep cranking it up and keep progressing, right? It's progressive, right? Let's keep progressing until we get better and better. But it's none of that. So you can, as a Democrat, you can come up with a program that sounds nice and get it to sort of percolate, and then a lot of left-wing people talking about it. We got this, whatever. And then there could be bad consequences to it, right? But no one will know, because on that side of the media, they're only talking about, sort of limited information. And before I forget, what I wanted to mention, before I forget, because this is a very important factor, I want to talk about how I have been received by the people watching this kind of, progressive content. I viewed a lot of conservatives in terms of their attitudes about certain things to be savage, for lack of a better word. It's kind of like, when we talk about like homelessness, it's kind of like, you hear things about like, well, they want to be homeless. It's a lifestyle. I mean, a lot of stuff being fed to them by who they're watching, but still they'll say stuff like that, or they'll say, they're just lazy. They don't want to work, right? If you work hard, like, life is hard, you got to be tough and right? That's like kind of the, and it's kind of like no compassion for like people who, like, not all of them are quote unquote lazy. Some people just had a bad situation and this is where they ended up, but there's no like compassion for that. But progressives, same thing. This is what I see from their perspective. Just like the conservatives, the compassion is always selective. Conservatives are compassionate about people that fit into their bubble. So are progressives, right? So if I'm poor, remember I come from poverty, right? So when I was poor, I would get all the sympathy for the exact same things I'm experiencing right now, right? Because look at what I'm doing right now. I'm an accountant, I'm a plumber, I'm an electrician. Like, I'm doing all this work. I have had more tools now than ever in my life. Like, I bought a circular saw, I bought an oscillating multi-tool. I'm watching videos, learning how to do this stuff. I had to fix a plumbing leak in one of the bathrooms. I'm doing electrical work because I don't have the money to go just call somebody up because I'm not getting rent. So I got to do it myself, right? So I'm doing all this hard labor to where I had to take a day off from work last week because it was too much for me. I started feeling like I was going to faint or something, like the very next day, because I was all weekend working. I'm 46 years old. I don't have a 26-year-old body, right? So I overdid it all day. I'm digging trenches. Like, I literally dug a trench to fix a drainage issue, right? And the thing is, the online progressives watching the content, like, they don't seem to understand what it takes to run a house like this. They think I'm just on a beach sitting there like cashing checks. No, I'm out there literally digging trenches at 46 years old, my entire weekend, and I didn't get enough sleep. I got, like I said, I took a day off because I was feeling sick. Now, this is the kind of thing that American progressives, like, they will have so much compassion for if you're poor. It's the same thing. You have a poor person who is like working their ass off, because I'll go to work, I work a full day at work, and then I come home and now I got to do the house stuff. So from the early morning till sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night, I'm working. And a lot of this is physical labor. And you watch, like, Young Turks, and they'll talk about, someone who's working hard and then they're only making $10 an hour, right? And you have the people at the top making all this money and look at all the labor. And these are the real people. Like, how do you get those billionaires? It's from the people on the ground working with their hands. That's me, right? I'm working with my hands, right? I don't know what I injured myself, but I literally injured myself. Like, I'm out there doing the hard labor. I built a mailbox for the first time, not the mailbox, but I set it up for my tenant. First time in my life. I went to Home Depot. I got like a what was it, a 8-foot wooden what's it called? I don't know what it's called. A stake, I guess. And it's a big square block of wood, right? I brought that and I took like 2 buckets. And I laid the buckets out, and I took my circular saw, and I cut it in half, right? And then I go in the backyard, and I got the sledgehammer, and I'm and it's raining. It's raining. It's cold. I'm out there with the flashlight on the thing, and one of the neighbors, the guy spoke to the renter. He actually said he saw me, and he was like, "What is this guy doing?" Because I was out there. It's like, it's cold. It's raining. Why was I out there? One of these people who aren't paying me any money. Right now, all the mail goes into one box. It's annoying. I know it's annoying for them because everyone's mail is in there. It's a mess. So I promised this person, here comes the cops again. I promised this person that I would set a mailbox up for them so they have their own mailbox so they don't have to deal with the mess. a person who has not paid me a dime, I gave them my word that I would do that. And even though on the day that I had to do it, like the weather was bad, because I said I would do it on that day, I went out there in the cold with my dad's sledgehammer and my shovel, digging the hole and whatever, and setting this whole thing up. And I set up that mailbox, right? I'm doing labor. I'm doing all of this work and not being compensated for my labor. But it's okay because I'm upper middle class. It's only okay to not be compensated for your labor if you're poor. Once you leave poverty, your labor is worthless to the American progressive, right? It's all about the poor, the poor, the poor. But here is the bigger problem, right? So now you're setting up a class war. You're setting up people who are upper middle class who buy these homes and try to rent them out, and they're being abandoned. They're being treated like crap by people like who I have. They're not getting the support from the community, from the government. So what do? Every man for themselves, right? This puts pressure to push the rents up because it makes renting a higher risk business. And if you know how business works, the higher the risk, the higher the costs, right? You're not going to get someone to do a very dangerous job without compensation, because who's going to want to do that? Who's going to want to risk their life to go travel to the moon or something, right? And you're going to pay them $20,000? You're not going to get anybody, right? So, oh man, I lost my train of thought. I'm getting old. What was I saying?
The divide between middle class and lower class.
I forgot where I was going with that. So but basically,
you were saying nobody's going to go to the moon for $20,000 a year, and then what's your train of thought after that?
I was saying why the pressure for the rent increases. Right, you're making renting a higher risk business. No one's going to want to do it for like minimal money, because you're thinking, if I get a bad tenant, they could be in there for years, right? That could sink me. So I need to make so much money that I have a good reserve that I can weather it, right? No one's going to want to get into a business where the risk is so high like that because you're not going to be in business for long, right? So you're putting pressure to increase the rent. Also, you're putting pressure for, again, this us versus them. It's kind of like, well, these renters, they're nasty. And also, let me tell you how bad things are. I'm a guy who, I used to do volunteer work. I was in the military. I actually used to go to schools and speak to kids and try to like get them on track. And I would pick out bad schools. And this was my own program, because when I graduated from high school, I right away saw things that I wasn't taught in school in terms of the real world, you know what I mean? And I felt like I wanted to go back and tell the kids, like, hey guys, such and such. So that was something that was on my heart from way back when I was a kid, right? Just a young adult rather. And somewhere in my career, I made that happen. I literally went and called, I looked for schools that were in like tough areas, and I would call them up and like, hey, can I come and speak to your kids? And I did it for free, all right? So I am that kind of person who would want to help out the community and give back. And I did it in secret, by the way. So it's not like I did it for attention, tax breaks. I didn't get any benefit from that, right? I had to take time off for my work to go and try to help other people's kids, right? Why do I tell you that? Not to make myself look good or whatever, to give you context. A person like that is now being put in a situation now where I'm being forced down a road where I gotta be careful what I'm saying, but let's just say the idea of discriminating against government programs seems feasible. Because think about it. I now know that the government does not care about me in terms of like I'm not big enough. Like if you're the 1%, then yeah, you're the one, you're paying off politicians. I'm not on that level. So they don't care about me. All they care about is their political narrative, and their narrative, I don't fit into it, right? Their narrative is focused on the poor. So I'm on my own. So I know if I get involved in any kind of government program, so if you come to me with some kind of voucher or whatever, and I get involved in that, I'm now getting involved in something where there's an entity that has no compassion for me. They will have me lose my home, and they will look at me and say, well, that's the risk you take. I literally had somebody tell me like that, some government worker on the phone that I spoke to, I think from the rental assistance program, and that's the attitude. It's kind of like, well, that's the risk you take. No, I don't expect that when I buy a home that the government is going to step in and force someone to take over my home and just live there and not. I don't expect that. I expect that I might get a bad tenant and have to deal with it for a few months, and I might not get any rent for those few months, but then I get them out after a few months, and I recover and move on. I don't expect that year after year someone might be in there and the government might just look at me and like, sorry. So think about that. So now you're in an environment where landlords will be running far away from programs. So here you are, a person, you're a good person, you're just poor, right? But you need help, so you get this voucher, and now you go out and you try to find a rent somewhere, and you can't find any place. And part of the reason for that is because of what's happening now. You burned enough of these landlords, and they get terrified, and then the survival of the not of the fittest. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, but it's kind of like, okay, it's me or you. Like, one of us is gonna die, and it's not gonna be me. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm sorry about what you're going through, but I'm not gonna like lose my home, and I don't want to be homeless either. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, so now I'm gonna discriminate against people that are on programs. I'm gonna make sure I don't get anywhere near. And think about that. If I'm the person who has sort of a, like, I want these programs. I want to participate in these programs. Like, I want to help people. If I'm feeling like, oh, I want to stay far away, can you imagine just a regular person who doesn't particularly have these sympathies? Like, they're more focused on their own lives or whatever. Like, what are they doing? So you're setting up an atmosphere where you can have like a lot of slumlords and a lot of like people doing a lot of stuff that's, so rents go up. There's less people want to rent because people are scared. They don't want to rent because they don't want to end up with like what I'm dealing with. So you have less apartments for rent. The apartments that are for rent, the prices go up higher because of the risk involved. And then also you have this sort of us versus them. The landlords feel like the tenants are, tenants displaced. They're so nasty and whatever. And there's lack of compassion. And then you have the tenants feeling the same way. They feel like the landlords, they just greedy and whatever. And it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. Sorry, I know I'm like rambling.
I think what you're saying, we'll probably go into it a bit more when we do knuckle down into the problem that's transpiring in lower class and middle class. And I think, was the term you're looking for dog eats dog? So it's turned this situation into dog eats dog.
I think so.
One of you have to survive.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you kill the other person, for a better term. So what I can see is probably more of an outsider looking in, because I'm not really in much of a property. But from an outsider looking in, what I can see is you've got the elites, or as you refer to them, the 1% up top. They don't care about any. To them, there is no middle class, higher class, lower class. It's them.
Right.
They don't care. So all they want to do is sort of figure out what are these programs we can put in place to make this shit easier for number one, for the people who are up there.
Right.
And you talked about they're not putting, and we've talked about they're not putting much in there for landlords. To them, a landlord who owns their own properties, making money off their own properties, is probably an obstacle for them. It's probably a threat for them. They want to push the landlords out. That's what it looks like from my side looking in. And they want, sooner or later, the big multi-billionaire
corporate.
Yeah, the tycoons. They want the
corporate landlords,
tycoons to own everything and then sell to us. They'll probably be sat in their big chairs saying, "We'll own everything," and then sell it to the peasants below. And what they're doing is they're putting these situations in place, like this program, to make us fight with each other. Same with the left and the right, and all these groups and these tribes, as you call them as well, that are out there. They're putting all these programs in place so the tribes go away and fight each other, whilst the ones, the at the top and the people at the top are looking down thinking, carry on going, guys, carry on going. Burn yourself out, and then we'll swoop in with a solution to your big problems that you've got down there. We'll provide you a solution, but all it's going to mean is more money for us, more control for us, and more power for us.
Right. And I can't tell you all this stuff without telling you like the sort of the most disgusting part of all. This is also disgusting, but my living circumstances. So I eventually ended up. So I purchased this van. I paid cash for this van. I think $1,300 I paid for it, which I think was a pretty good price to get it for. Right. This is a 1999 van, and I don't know how much you can see. You see my curtains?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So this was pretty much, I bought this van because I knew eventually I would need to move into it. So here's the idea. I am a renter. I still am a renter. I'm on a month to month. I'm actually in a situation where I could be evicted as well. Right? So I have this house with a big mortgage. People aren't paying the rent. The mortgage has to get paid, and that's cash. Right? You can put stuff on credit card. You can't put your mortgage on credit card. You have to have the actual cash to pay it, right? So the situation I ended up in is I need to make, it's weird. I'm almost forced into almost like a capitalist mindset where I needed to make money from everything that could make money. I couldn't afford to throw money away. So my apartment has value, even though I'm not actually allowed to do anything with it because I don't own that property, right? But my apartment has value. I'm paying, good money for it every month. So I can't afford to be there because this is something that has value. And even though I'm not allowed to really, it has the potential to make money. So what I did is I pretty much put my apartment up on, I'm sure you know about Airbnb. Yeah, so I put it up for Airbnb so that I could, basically make a little bit of money. I think I only made like $300 a month from it in terms of profit. So that helps a little bit. I mean, the mortgage is much more than that. So $300 doesn't really do much, but it all adds up, right? But I couldn't afford to be living in this apartment. You know what I mean? When I could actually use it to generate revenue. So I ended up giving that apartment up, and then I basically moved into my van, and the day that I moved in was like the coldest day of the year. It was like 12 degrees outside, but I got a 0 degree what do you call it, a bag, sleeping bag, which that was all a learning experience, man. I never knew this. Like you could be out in 10-degree weather and just be in this sleeping bag and you're fine. But yeah, I guess if there's enough insulation or whatever, because I did that. I was out here 12 degrees, and I was actually fine as far as temperature with no heating in here at all, just a sleeping bag. But yeah, I mean, and it's a mess. I don't know how much you can see here. Like this is real life. Like this is not some YouTube thing and you get everything all neat or whatever. Like with all the chaos, I don't have time to worry about like aesthetics and whatever. Like things are just like thrown everywhere. But one of the most gross things that and I'm sorry to share this with you. It's kind of gross, but I needed to figure out plumbing, right? In terms of like a bathroom. Didn't have the money to like address that in a more civilized way. So I use a bucket, right? So a guy who in this country has enough money to buy a big 4-family house is using a bucket. And the things that I'm learning, right? So I learned online that apparently that, people that have horses, I don't know if you know anything about farm stuff. Like I don't have any horse background, but I guess they use these pellets to like cover up the odor of like the cow mess or whatever. I mean cow mess, horse, right? Right. So somebody mentioned this online because I've been looking at a lot of this RV life or van life stuff, and they were like, this works great. And you know what? It actually does. So I've got my bucket, and it's like almost like conservatives love this part. It's like a litter box situation. You know what I mean? And I have a whole system that I use, and I make it work. But it's just kind of, at 46 years old, I work so hard. I've been through so much, and for me to be, using a bucket, you know what I mean? Like it's just like. But meanwhile, these people are living in my house, best part of town, don't have to work, everything's paid for, and they got all the heat and everything and plumbing, and if any of that stuff breaks, guess who got to fix it? Guess who's got to find the money?
Yeah, you're the one maintaining that for them whilst you're stuck in the van.
Right. Exactly. And the thing about it is this, unfortunately, we're talking about like the media. This is not, I sent you some videos and I noticed I didn't see a lot of videos, and I'm not surprised about that. This is not something that is very profitable, right? No one wants to talk about some guy who has enough money to buy a multifamily home. Oh, and it's amazing. No matter how like the bucket or whatever you think like that, if somebody else, like let's say a poor person was doing this stuff, oh my goodness, you want to see the waterwork. Oh, it's so horrible. You know what I mean? But because I have a little bit of money, it doesn't matter what I have to go through, how gross or whatever it is. You know what I mean? In fact, I should be out on the street, right? It's like, so you're poor, great. Let's help you out. We got community, whatever, right? And then you work your way out of poverty. Oh, you're evil now. You got money. You're a part of the elite. Wait a minute. I was just poor with you the other day. Like, what happened? It's this kind of thing where you're supposed to be eternally poor, and this is like a conservative talking point. Like, you see, this is how we have, like, how the right wing is able to progress because of garbage like this that the left is doing, right? Because you come as a conservative and you say, oh, the left, they just want you to be poor and blah, 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 blah. You don't come with any solutions, but you use this stuff to demonize the left and to attract people over to your side. Because who wants to be eternally poor? So there's a lot of people, you look at them and you can talk to them and appeal and say, hey, these guys, they just want poverty and they want handouts. And you're like, wow, that seems to make sense. And then they go and they're like, oh, I'm a conservative now. Right, now I'm going to focus on these left people, they're socialists or whatever. Who's coming up with a solution? Right, the right is just about attacking the left, and then the left is just about like following along like whatever popular narrative, Black
Trends.
Lives Matter, right, trend.
It seems like what it is it's like a crabs in a bucket scenario where all the poor are
right
in a bucket. One eventually breaks the barrier and finds a way out, but yet all the other crabs are grabbing them back down and pulling them back down. They're saying, come on, go get out. And then as soon as you find a way out, they're all trying to find a way out. As soon as someone finds a way out, they're all saying, no, not you. It should have been me, sort of thing. And then trying to pull. That's.
I'm not gonna call any names, but I think I mentioned to you as well. So this is how I've actually experienced this in terms of like what I'm saying to you. I had that right-wing channel, posted a video about housing, right? I made a comment about what I'm dealing with. Like I told you, it's all about the narratives, right? Compassion for people selective compassion about people who fit into a narrative. I fit the narrative for conservatives, right? They talk about how dangerous these socialist programs, like that's what they call it, socialist program, right? How dangerous it is, right? So the idea of me as a person who pulled myself up on my bootstraps and worked hard and bought a nice house and now these government programs are on my, like, so much compassion, like their audience was just like, oh, that's messed up or whatever. Now, mind you, the guy's channel, like, I definitely have a lot of problems with a lot of stuff that he says on there. I may have made like one or two videos like calling him out on something, but I haven't focused on his channel. But in general, like our politics are completely opposite, right? But regardless, his audience was very, very compassionate, right? And 140 people liked the comment saying that basically they were all saying that they wanted me to be on the channel. So here's a guy, right? You're on YouTube, and 140 people. This is one of the most liked comments on the video, right? One of the most liked comments on the video is your audience saying, bring this guy on. We want to hear about his story. No response. I DM'd the channel owner multiple times. No response, right? Now, left wing, same thing. There is someone in the left wing, smaller channel, that I've actually had communications with. So we've had dialogue before. We've communicated, right? I mentioned to them what's going on. I even sent them a picture to show, look, this is how I'm living. And I'm like, this would be great content for you, right? No response. No response. Right? What is profitable is for, if I were a poor person who was dealing with this right now, like, my job and they don't pay me enough money and I'm working 15 hours and now I can't pay the rent, so I have to go move into my van and I'm using a bucket. Oh, when are you available? When are you available? Right?
It's about pulling all the right heartstrings, at the right time. Because it is, like we said earlier, not well, just before, it's about trends as well. If that's not trendy at this moment in time, this housing crisis or eviction crisis, it's not being talked about anywhere. So therefore, it's actually not sexy because it's not being put anywhere. So it's not a trend. So no one's actually going to pick it up until this. It depends on who it's going to play benefit to, but until something happens within this crisis where it'll pay benefit to a different group of people or a different tribe, that might trigger it to then become sexy, and then, believe it or not, you'll probably get multiple phone calls saying, "Come on our show." You'll probably get enough phone calls where you'll be turning them down. But at this moment in time, no one actually cares about it.
It's worse than that too, because I suspect that these people are aware of like my true like independence. I know people say they're independent, but then they're still kind of like, but I'm really like, it's not just me saying it. Like I stand like alone basically, right? I mean, I feel a kinship with my fellow human beings. I feel a kinship with people from, my country, right? But in terms of politically, right, I do not like. I would feel ashamed to be associated with the left. I would feel even more ashamed to be associated with the right in this country. In other countries, I don't know that much about them, but when I feel like I could more fit in. But here, I reject both of them. So, having me on and having me potentially challenge some of the narratives that they talk about, I think is also problematic. Because, for example, the left-wing channel probably promotes some of these very programs that led me to where I'm at, right? And also, they probably promote the narrative of like that I'm evil. Not me personally, but landlords are evil, right? So to have a landlord who actually seems like a normal person, you know what I mean, who's not evil, who's trying to survive. Like, why did I buy the house? I didn't tell you that. I bought it because of the limited safety net in this country. Because I've been twice in my life thinking about, might I be homeless? I've been twice in my life looking at, how can I pay this rent? How can I pay these bills? I'm being buried. I'm trying to find a job and I'm not being able to find a job. Money's running out. What's my next step? Because I have family, but the idea of at my age for me to go and be a burden, like I had that debate. Like, would you go and be a burden to your family, or would you just rather just like, I'm gonna tough it out. I'll figure it out. I'll get in a homeless shelter. Like I've been in that situation, and I said to myself, never again. Because of the limited safety net in this country, I felt the need that I needed to get financial independence. So I wanted to start a business to where I no longer was chained to my job. Like, I make a lot of money, but I'm a slave to my industry. If my industry falls apart, I'm worthless, right? Like I went from 6-figure job to greeter at a gym. Like that's how things are in this country, right? With all the skills and background, and I can communicate or whatever, I went out there trying to find a job in a bad job market, and I went from 6-figure to greeter at a gym. So I can live a nice lifestyle as long as my career is going well, but in the blink of an eye, it can vanish, and there's not much left for me. Like the unemployment is too low, social net is too low, the minimum job. Like, we don't live in a country where, not everybody wants to like, I want to have nice cars and whatever. Some people just want to be content. They want to be comfortable, right? So you should, as a person who doesn't have a lot of like aspirations, you should be able to just have a regular job, and that pays for your food and your housing, right? You should be comfortable with just a regular, but that's not how it is here. If it's not a professional job, you're going to probably struggle to pay rent and to eat, right? So I wanted to escape from that. That's the point of buying the house, so that I would work. I love my job, by the way, but I wanted to work because I choose to work, not because I need to, right? I wanted to get away from that where it's like, I gotta do this. I gotta be in this industry. I gotta live in this location, right? People see the good side, like, and it is good to make money, and you can travel if you have time, but you're also sort of trapped, right? So that was the whole point. And ironically, I got the reverse effect because the house has become a massive liability. And now I'm even more chained to my job because before I always live well under my means. I save a lot of money. I come from poverty, so I am always sensitive to like money things. So I don't want to have a expensive cable. Like a lot of stuff people pay for, I don't. I'll buy used instead of new. Like that's how I've lived. So previously, I could go 5-6 months without any income, and it'd be tight, but I'd be okay. Now, if I lose my job, I mean, I'll be done in a month or two, right? Because I don't have enough as it is. So if there's no income coming in, and unemployment would be irrelevant. It would be irrelevant to my mortgage. Like unemployment, that's not going to do anything for me, right? So I'm actually more a slave to my career. I know some people are probably triggered by using that language, but I'm going to be more tied to it, which is the opposite effect. But that was the whole point. I wanted this. This is going to be like a retirement thing for me, and also I like. I'm really getting into like the home ownership thing. Like I'm really loving like setting up new lights and figuring out what kind of color I'm going to paint and I'm going to build a garage here, and also the business. Like I like customer service. Like I like the challenge of, so let's say I'm running a business and you guys are my customers, like me going above and beyond to where you actually verbally tell me like, bro, I'm so happy with the service that you guys do. Like that is like motivating to me, So same thing with the renting. I wanted to create the most amazing like living experience for my tenants. I have so many plans of what I want to do so that I can attract the best tenants and retain them. I thought about like movie nights. You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to like do what everybody else is doing. Like I'm trying to build something here. Like I want to be a landlord like no other. Just being who I am, right? But look where I'm at. But I guess I know we ran on a little bit long, but I guess in conclusion, the positive of all of this is one of the people claims that they are moving out. They claim that they found a place. It's been a really long time. I don't know what's taking so long with their application or whatever's going on. Because of the life they live, I'm concerned about their application falling through. Something in the background comes up or whatever. I don't know all their business, but I know enough to know that these are people that would definitely have potentially things that pop up. So but I'm thinking positively, because if that person leaves, I will actually be able to finally be out of crisis. I'm still going to be living like a squatter just because I won't have money to like go like I'm going to go rent another place or something. But I won't be going backwards every month. Like right now, every month I'm going backwards. My credit is like, my balances are growing. If I get that person out, I can stop that to where I'm no longer in crisis. I begin to be in recovery, and this really problem guy, I can actually kind of let him fade to the back and let the courts do whatever. It's still risky because roof repair, $40,000. You know what I mean? Like paint job, $12,000. I mean, there's a lot of expenses, and anything can break at any time. I could have a pipe break, and they got to come in with a bulldozer or whatever. So you need to have like a good reserve account. Like I should really have, I think, $15,000 to $20,000 reserve account. I've got none. I got no reserve account. So even getting out of the crisis by getting that person in there, because I still have this other guy, I would still be very vulnerable, because if a major repair comes up, where's the money going to come from? Right? You need to make enough money to cover the mortgage plus you need profit to fill a reserve account so you can have for emergencies. That's just business. You cannot be running a business and you don't have any sort of backup. Like there's a flood and like, oh, we don't have insurance or whatever. Like, okay, we got to shut down the business. You need to have something, there. So that's why you need to have a certain amount of profit. And then that profit needs to be even higher now because of these types of programs. Because now, if you know that you can have a tenant for 2 years and they don't pay, right? That means you really need to get like as much profit as possible because you need a bigger nest egg. Because imagine a tenant doesn't pay rent for 2 years. So you need to be able to make up that amount of money that they're not paying. That needs to be available to you somewhere in an account somewhere. And the only way to do that is if you make so much profit that you're able to maintain the property and deal with stuff and then still save into an account. You know what I mean? So anyway.
So regarding this process that you're going through at the moment, can you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Like, can you see this issue being resolved anytime soon or within a year?
I have put this idea in my head that by my birthday this year, which is, wow, closer than I realized. So let's just say June. By June this year, that I will be beyond all of this. But there is a possibility that the real problem guy might go beyond that because I know he's gonna like, this is what I'm expecting. I'm expecting that when he finally leaves, it's definitely going to be by force. Like even after the court says he has to leave, he's probably going to still stay. The marshal's going to have to come and literally drag him out. But before he does that, he's going to leave me with a surprise. He's going to put cement in my pipes. He's going to flood something. Like I already put in my mind that be prepared to spend a lot of money fixing whatever it is. I just don't see him walking out. But in terms of positive, like regardless of that he's finally gone, right? So I can tolerate and deal with like that in the moment because that means I'm beyond this chapter. Because this chapter has to end, like because it's I'm so vulnerable. Like I said, if I lose my job, like that's a disaster. And if something breaks, if the right thing breaks at the wrong time, I'm in trouble. Right? It's a house, right? The stuff is like thousands of dollars to like replace, the what if the water heater fails? Right? Those things like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. You know what I mean? And that's not even including the cost to have somebody put it in.
And they're constantly being used. These things inside the home are constantly being used every day. So any day it could literally break.
Right. And you got a guy who's literally slamming my door. Like that's another thing he's doing now. He literally every time he goes in, bang!
We've got increased risk there of something breaking just because of a tenant that's in the property that isn't even. He's causing you problems. Yeah, he's causing you problems anyway.
Carl, are you in contact with any other landlords that are in a similar situation or scenario to you?
That's a good question. I am not. I have a friend who's a landlord, but he has not had to deal with these situations, fortunately for him. But he's been a great help in terms of like suggestions or ask questions and stuff like that. Because I'm new at this, right? So he knows a lot more. But I'll tell you, I went to a landlord protest, and it was such a representation of again how broken this country is. It looked to me, you know what they call AstroTurf? That's what it looked like to me. I went to a protest in New York City, the melting pot, with people from all over the world, right? Who's at this protest? Who are these landlords? All Asian. Why would all the landlords be Asian in New York City? So that right there was a red flag. Like that's indicating there's something going on. This is like not organic somehow. Like somehow this is like there's something going on here. Like that was my first thing. But then when I saw the 4 or 5 Republican politicians who were running for office, one after the other, go up and give their pitches. And I heard them say all this stuff like, oh, this is the Democrats and their policies, and we got to vote them out, vote them. And I'm just like, wow. The short story is, I'm pretty sure that someone in the Republican Party or connected basically set this thing up as a fake thing. They're going to use it for video for their some kind of marketing thing or whatever. And also, yeah, yeah, exactly, propaganda, right? And then also these people that come there, you get them all riled up, and then they were telling them to go and tell their friends to go vote for them, right? And it was so sad because everything that they were saying, the audience is just sitting there like nodding. And then I felt, so I learned something from that because, you know, I'm a person not normally afraid to speak my mind, but in that moment, it was tough for me because I had a whole group of people. So now you know the psychological dynamics, right? A whole group of people all agreeing like, yes, vote them out. And then these people on stage, you know, with the mic and this and that and the Democrats, whatever. And I'm just sitting there like, these guys, they're not going to do anything either. Like, I know that they're not going to do anything. And I realize that they're just taking advantage of the pain of these people, assuming that they're even real landlords. I think they're real landlords, but they're taking advantage of the pain of these landlords. Like, they know that they're struggling and they're desperate. Somebody help me. And then you come in and like, yeah, we're going to help you. And I know they're not going to do anything. They just want to use their pain to get votes. And I did speak up a couple of times, but it was very difficult to be the odd one out. You know, while they're all nodding their heads, and I'm like, but what are you guys gonna do? I would retort and say that, like, what's the actual plan? Like, how are you gonna do this? Because they would just say they're gonna do this. We're gonna put a stop. And I'm like, but how? Like, don't just say stuff. Like, tell me what your plan is. Like, so I can know if you're serious or whether you're just like pandering. But it's interesting. Again, I go to this landlord protest and it looks like it's completely manufactured, right? And again, just like how the right wing will jump in and they'll exploit the unseriousness of some American progressives and like, oh, but look at these programs, they're doing these things and they don't care about it. Well, the left can do the same thing here, right? They can use it to support their demonization of people like me because I'm an evil landlord and say, look at these scumbag landlords here, right? And Republicans everywhere, right? Right wing, those right wingers, blah, blah, blah. You see? Right? So you can paint the whole thing. It's a fake thing and whatever. So I don't actually exist, right? It's all just a bunch of greedy slumlord, you know, whatever. And that's it. There's no, like I learned stories about this elderly people who worked hard, you know, regular working class people work hard their entire life, purchased like a duplex, you know, 2-family home, and they decide to rent it out, right? They put all their money into this home, have a tenant that's not paying, and puts them in a financial crisis, right? But they don't exist, right? The focus, the selective compassion is just on, see, that working class people, they meant something up until they got to the point of they bought a duplex. Oh, you have more home than you need, you bastard, right? Before they bought that house, I'm sure lots of compassion. Oh, these are working class people. They're working in the factory or whatever. And yeah, and solidarity or whatever. But the minute they go and they buy a duplex and try to rent it out and they expect to get paid rent, like, how dare they? Now you class them with 1%. They're part of the evil.
The problem I've got through with this whole story is if the progressive media are labeling you as a 1%er, like you're an evil landlord, but we've been on the call now for an hour and a half, and you've come across as a genuine, like, nice guy. And if you was my landlord, like, I'd love you to be my landlord because you just seem like you're honest, you're genuine, and you'd look after the property, which is what a landlord should do, right? My problem is if you're being victimized, you're being put in this situation, all that's going to happen is corporations are going to come in and they're going to become the landlords, which is the last thing I would want. I wouldn't want to be a tenant for a corporate landlord.
Right. That's who comes in. Like there are people that are just lurking in the shadows. These corporations just waiting for me to foreclose so they can come in. Because who else can afford a house right now with 8% interest or whatever? Right. So that's who's waiting to come in. So it's just so like it's like you're stepping on your own feet, right? Rather than support a regular, like a real person, like support me and support the tenants. So as a community, we're good. You abandon me so that somebody who really is the way you presenting me as the real evil, like, because they don't care. Like BlackRock, they don't care. They'll put everybody on the street, man. You guys go live in the river. You know what I mean? We gotta make profits, right? You think? Even a bad landlord can't compare to the kind of damage that these kinds of companies can do and don't even care about it. Because the evil landlord, he's just one guy. You have a multi-billion-dollar firm that has the ability to like corner an entire market, like buy up all the properties and push them all up. And I mean, wow.
This is where I think the argument with right and left, I know both sides have different ideologies and different views on things, but I think both sides need to find a way to be able to work together, because it's not right versus left. It's us versus them. It's us. It's the 99% versus the 1%. It's the community of people versus corporations coming in and just killing the soul of our like countries or city or small town communities that you've got. That is the problem here. And I think the progressive media are missing. Well, I don't know if they're missing or I'm not sure. But I feel like them pushing certain agendas makes way for corporations to come in and sort of take more control. You mentioned minimum wage before, and I know it's a difficult policy to sort of fully argue against. But one thing that worries me about minimum wage is, and I think it's a wider issue in society, is if minimum wage is brought in, and say you're a small-time shopkeeper who needs to pay someone like just a helping hand around the shop, you can no longer afford to pay that person because your minimum wage is, say, it's doubled. So that person will then go to Walmart, who can pay that what they're requesting, their minimum wage, and then that shopkeeper has to close his shop. And then what? Like, it's just giving more power to corporations who can afford to put in these sort of policies, which worries me.
One point that I make about that is that I feel that the lack of increasing of wages over time, even though inflation keeps going up, right? You set up a situation where you're subsidizing businesses, right? Most businesses fail. Business is difficult, right? Not everyone has that forte. But if you allow people to pay dirt wages, you can, in a way, subsidize people who are not good at business, right? To me, a good business should be able to make enough profit to pay your workers a livable wage and cover your expenses and have a little bit of profit for you on the top. That is not easy to do, but business is not easy, right? So a lot of people that are in business should not be in business. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine if we allowed you to pay $1 an hour, like that was allowed. Do you know how many more people could be successful in business? I guarantee you, if I didn't have any compassion at all for anyone and they made a law that you could pay $1 an hour, I guarantee you I would be opening up so many businesses. There's businesses that I want to open up right now. If the salary was that low, I would do it, right? Because I don't have to be that good at it, right? Because if my costs are so low, I can get 10 people for $10 an hour for 10 people. I mean, think about what I could do with that. So the onus of me to be, because what's the thing about a business? Like coming up with a great idea at the right time, the right market, right? And then also your costs. You're spending the right amount of money, not too much, right? So how did you build your store, right? You made your store just nice enough that it serves the purpose. People come in and they feel it's clean and whatever, and it's visually appealing, right? But you didn't spend too much that you're cutting into your profits. You know what I mean? That's a challenge, right? And only people have that certain. So in my view, yes, a lot of businesses would shut down, but those businesses probably shouldn't have been business in the first place. Because again, if we had $1 an hour, there'd be a lot more businesses. Because again, it'd be easier to make profit. So and also you got to look at again the big picture. What's the end result, right? To me, what would happen is the people who shouldn't be in business to begin with would fail, but the customers, they still need stuff, right? So you talk about the big guys, but what about the small guys who are actually like really good at it? So you have a hardware store over there that's only in business because this is one of the reasons, is because like they don't pay much money. So, you know, they can be profitable with low overhead, right? And then you got another hardware store that's actually really great. He has all the right tools and whatever he's doing, the poor guy, not that poor, you know what I mean? Like the one that's not that good at business, he shuts down when the minimum wage increases. And then his customers goes to the next guy who actually was running a much better operation. Right? Somehow he's doing something like no one else is doing. Like maybe they offer training classes or something, or whatever. He comes with some new angle to where his added value, and then people decide like we're gonna go. So you have a consolidation. The weaker businesses phase out, and you go to the. Obviously, we don't know what the future holds, but that's the way that I would look at things. I would also. I'm not gonna deny that there would be some level of like the big businesses benefiting as well. Like you said, Walmart, they can afford to pay the higher. But instead of just thinking about that, can it not be that you have basically now you have a bunch of poor business people running businesses subsidized by these low salaries, and then you have good business people as well. Then you have the big corporations. But by increasing minimum wage, do you get rid of the bad businesses, and then the good small businesses, they survive along with the big boxes? So you have the big boxes and you have the better. Because think about it. How many businesses, I don't know in your area, but a lot of businesses have like poor ratings. But yet they're still in business. You look at them as like 1-star, 2-star. People are like, oh, the service sucks or whatever. But somehow they're able to survive. Like imagine a lot of those guys just disappearing because they can't afford to pay their workers. And then the ones who are actually the 5-star ones that people are like, this is great value. And they could easily attract those customers. And it's like, do I want to go to Walmart where like no one knows anything and it's just like cheap stuff or whatever? Or do I want to go to this small business where like Harry, the owner Harry, I know this guy, he lives on my street. He's a cool guy. And all his workers, they're like super helpful and whatever. Like, cause he's running he's really thought about value, because he doesn't have Walmart money. Walmart can take advantage of like monopoly, deep pockets, marketing. Harry has no choice but to be like the best, especially if they increase minimum wage. Like he has to, like I gotta create like the most value to where people are willing to come here, and you know what I mean. Like so anyway, that's just the way that I view. Of course, I could be wrong, but that's what I would imagine would happen.
I think that's a really good way of looking at it, and I never really looked at it that way myself personally. And I was just thinking, I go to this shop near me, even though I've got a supermarket like 2 minutes away. I go to this shop that's again about 2 minutes away, just because I know the guy, he's a nice guy. I'll have a bit of a chat with him when I'm in there, but I'll pay that little bit extra for the goods and stuff because the shopkeeper's a genuine nice guy. So, but if I go to the supermarket, it's called Tesco in the UK. If I go to the supermarket, like I don't know the people there. To be fair, some of them are quite rude, like the way they talk to you. So, but you know you're paying a low price, and you go there, you just get what you need, and you're out. But when you go to a normal shop, you know you're getting a good service, and you'll happily pay that little bit extra for the good service.
Like I'll tell you right now, if I had some kind of rich dad, all right, with my experience right now, I might consider like creating, like getting into like a hardware store business, because I see there's a big need, right? And I see value that I could create. I don't know a lot of this stuff. I don't have a lot of background in. I've worked on cars and bikes in my life. I don't know about like painting or any of this. Like I'm learning all this stuff. So I really need the knowledge. And yes, I got YouTube videos and stuff, but when I go to the store, I I really, really am seeking knowledgeable people, and I have a hard time finding it when I go to Home Depot, when I go to Lowe's. So I would create a home hardware store that would address that, and I would get all these, because I know there's a lot of do-it-yourself culture, right? My hardware store would cater to that, right? All my people would be like really knowledgeable. You can't work for me unless you really know electrical, you know, whatever. And when people come in and you have a project, like my guys know you need this gauge wire, you need this, and this is how you do it. And go for the full mile. How else can I'll keep thinking, like, how else can I add value? Like, what about like, let's do training. On the weekends, we'll have like a 2 hour whatever, and you can come and sit down and learn how to do this, do whatever. And think about that. So now when you want to get your stuff, like I know me as a customer, I'm going to that shop. I'm sorry, I'm not going to Home Depot and Lowe's, because I need that. I need help. I need someone to tell me. I don't want just a place to buy stuff. I need information, and you're not getting it from Lowe's. So you could sit there and exist in unison. Some people will go to Home Depot just because they're bigger and they have a bigger selection and they just know of it or whatever. But once my customers know about what I'm doing, right, they're not going to you. They go to you maybe for something that I don't have, but generally they're gonna come to me. Like I greet people by name, and again, the work, like I would push that kind of, like these are things that someone really serious about business, like you can do this stuff and retain and compete with the big box. So the big box, they're probably not gonna. They wanna minimize costs, right? So they're not trying to like pay the extra salary and all this kind of extra stuff. They want like, what's the minimum we can spend to, you know? So I don't know. That's just my theory on that. Don't steal my idea, man.
We could be the UK branch.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Do it yourself hardware. I'm telling you, man, it's like I said, like all these bad reviews. I know you have it as well. You have a lot of places they're in business, and you're like, how are they in business? Like people are upset. 1 star, 2 star. Oh, these people suck. They rip you off, or whatever it is, or the workers don't know anything, but you still go there anyway.
Yeah, no, it's a good. I like the way you made me think differently about the whole thing from a completely different perspective, and that's why I like these sort of conversations, because you've got a completely different perspective than I do. But then listening to your perspective has made me think about it all from me sitting here. What do I do? And I think the minimum wage in my head, I was thinking, I don't want these corporations to like get too big and start stealing all the employees from smaller businesses, and small businesses gone, and then all you've got to go to is a big corporation. But actually, it's just going to get rid of the shit small companies and make small companies better.
Right. And then if you do it over time as well, which is what usually the plans are set up that way, where it's not instant. I think instant is very problematic. But if you do it over years, because here's what happens. So if I, as a business owner, I know that in 10 years I need to pay this amount of money, right? If I'm a good business person, I'm going to start restructuring. So how can I restructure to where I can pay these salaries, right? So that's where you really clean things up. How can we add value? Like let's add a premium services division, right? So now we're going to create a higher level of service for people that want extra hand holding, and they're willing to pay the extra money, right? And then we'll use some of that profit to pay these higher salaries. And also, where's waste, right? We're spending all this money on X, Y, and Z. What's the return? And I mean, like, you would tweak things, and over time, you try something, And hopefully by the 10 years, when the salaries are fully up, by then you've adjusted. And obviously, you know what happens to the other people, right, who don't adjust, and they just sit there and whine and complain and like, oh, this is not in the government, blah blah blah. Like they don't have any ideas, right? They were just riding off of this like low salary thing, and that made it easy for them. Now that they're forced to actually do real business, now they got nothing. They have no creative ideas, no solutions, right? All they can do is like, oh, take advantage of I had this amount of money to buy this thing, and I got it at the right location or whatever it is, you know what I mean? And I have a customer base, and people come. They hate me, but they come anyway. You know what I mean? But now that I got to pay more money, I got nothing, right? Because that's where you need to come up with, like, unlike, I don't know if you know about Elon Musk. Unlike Mr. Elon Musk, who seems to more take other people's ideas than really coming up with his own, you know, you got to be the one to be the innovator, all right? You have to actually be the founder of Tesla, you know, not just the self-proclaimed founder of Tesla. Like, you got to be the actual guy who innovated and came up with this idea, right? So that's the way I look at it. I think also a general formula should be created if we were functional as a country, where you figure out some kind of cost of living constant, right? And then you do a calculation. So based on the cost of living here, so minimum wage should be like a percentage or something. So it's relative to the area. That's the talking point the right wing likes to talk about. Address it. That's the thing. It's rather than fixing something, it's just being contrarian and saying how it's going to fail. No, come up with an idea. Yes, there's different levels, there's different cost of living in different areas. So come up with a minimum wage that has a formula. So it's a percentage of the cost of living constant, right? So there's some kind of number that you calculate that in Florida, it's this number. In New York, it's that number. And then minimum wage is this percent of that number, right? Solved, right? This whole thing about, oh, it's 15, but $15 an hour is a lot of money. Okay, we get it. So just create a formula and it's solved, right? That's not a difficult thing. Like, I'm not some kind of genius. Like, this is stuff that we've done before, right? It's not even like it's a new thing. Like rent. They say rent should not be more than 30% of your income, right? So that's doesn't matter whether you're in New York or Florida, right? Obviously the incomes change, New York versus Florida, but this is a percentage of income. So it's irrelevant. Whether you live in a place where average person makes $30,000, then obviously the rent, 30% of rent is going to be reflectively lower because it's a percentage. Done. Just don't use a dollar amount. I don't know.
I think though with the minimum wage side of things, there'll be too much backlash from the Walmarts, for example, if they have to pay their staff more in New York, for example, or in California or wherever. They're not going to want that. Therefore, that will not happen. So any change that's going to be made has to be beneficial. It's shit, but it has to be beneficial for the elites, for the biggest, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Apples. Well, I know Apple pay less than minimum wage because they use third world countries anyway. But the ones centered in America, it has to be signed off by them for real change to actually happen, and it has to. They're reaping so much money at the moment. If they won't allow for a change that's going to drastically decrease their profit margins, and it does help out the lower end as we've said, but the big boys that are in charge, it's going to hurt their profit margins. And they're the ones that are going to be they're the ones that have to sign it off in the end. It's not going to be any politician really that signs off.
And here's the sad thing is that because of the way our media is in this country, if I'm Walmart and I don't want to pay the extra money because of profits, capitalism, whatever, right? I can come up with whatever lame excuse to why it's a bad idea. And I can guarantee you conservative media is going to repeat it, right? So I come out there and say, increase the salary, then what's going to happen is we're going to have to do layoffs. And you guys don't understand how corporations work. When as a corporation, what we do, we have this thing called the balance sheet and this and that. And then what's going to happen is such and such, and whatever, just come up with whatever story. I can always guarantee you, if you say it smooth enough and with enough big words, all of right-wing media, whenever progressive media says that, we need to increase minimum wage, you're going to listen to a Ben Shapiro, Stephen Crowder, they're going to use the same language the corporations are going to say, but wait a minute, you see, you liberals, you don't understand how business work. You see, businesses, they have a thing called a balance sheet. And where'd you get this idea from? Are you literally repeating what the CEO said? Like, did you challenge what he said? Did you look into what he said? Or did you just accept it and now you're just gonna, who are you really working for? Are you working for the people? Or are you working for these corporations? What's it's so weird. And in the future, we got to talk about the difference between conservatives in America versus in your country, because here, from what I see, it's they only exist, the conservative media, they only exist to basically push out whatever the Republican Party wants. That's their only purpose. They are there to serve the Republican Party and the corporations. And I say this based on, I have not really seen anything coming from conservative media that did not serve the purpose of the Republican Party. So, for example, if I were a Republican politician, I would love our media, right? If I were a Republican politician, I would love all of conservative media. In contrast, if I were a Democrat, there'll be a side of the media, a pretty good size, that I'm I don't want to talk to you guys. I want to pretend like you don't exist. And if your numbers get too big, I might get a little nervous. And I might push for some regulation to where disinformation, whatever we got, you know what I mean? I might support things that I know at the end of the day will keep your numbers lower, because the stuff you're saying is kind of challenging what I'm about. But I don't see that from the Republican Party. Whatever they want that their voters to focus on is what their media promotes, and that's it. Meanwhile, I don't agree with a lot of stuff that TYT, Young Turks, has to say. But so many times, look, they did a video about Biden's State of Union speech, and they were like, he lied about this, he lied about that. Oh, but this thing he said, that's actually true, right? Biden doesn't want somebody telling to millions of people that he's lying, right? But this is what you get from the largest progressive media channel. Now, I can't say that in contrast. What has Ben Shapiro or Stephen Crowder said lately that me as a Republican politician be like, oh, that Ben Shapiro, damn it. You know what I mean? No. Whatever they are putting out there, he's helping them push it out. And every once in a while, he does what I call honorable mention, where he'll sort of go against the grain. One time he did a video against Trump, but overall, that's what they're doing. I don't know what's happening in your country in terms of conservative media versus progressive media.
So in the UK, I feel like politics is a bit strange here. It's not as black and white as America. So we've got a Conservative Party in power at the moment who they behave very similar to, I don't want to say Democrat Party, because I don't 100% understand all the Democrat Party's policies, but the way they move, the way the narratives they put out, some of them sound very similar to what is going on in America as well. For example, all the carbon, the climate change narratives, all the policies and stuff they're putting in place are similar to what the Democrats would put in place in America, right? Whereas if the Republicans came in, when Trump came in, he was against these climate change policies. But Trump is the Republicans are considered the conservatives in America, but this is our conservative party doing what Democrats do in America. So it's very it's a little bit more confusing over here, whereas I don't really see a right and a left as such. I see the conservatives moving more left and the left moving further like into the more like socialism with Jeremy Corbyn.
So it's left and lefter.
Basically.
Yeah. And there's still the conservatives still are for big business, and so the conservatives, the party usually they're all from a private school called Eton. I don't know if you've heard of it. So a lot of like the high politicians in the Conservative Party all went to this same private school called Eton, and they're all friends, and they've made friends with other people who've got into high positions in companies and like investment banks and all that. So they all do business together. Like for example, when COVID happened, we had the PPE, so the masks and stuff for hospitals. There were contracts out there that were cheaper, lower cost, same quality, but the contracts went to one of I think was it Rishi Sunak's friend?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it went to one of his friends, and
which
they
was
probably
ridiculously more expensive than what they were going to get.
Yeah, so just the way it is, there's just so much corruption at a high level. At the moment, I'm anti like establishment, anti corporate. I just don't like getting too involved in what they're up to, because at the end of the day, I just think they're doing it for their own personal interests, not for the interests of the wider society. So when it comes to media, like we don't really have a massive YouTube scene. So not really. We got trigonometry.
Russell Brand.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Russell Brand?
Oh, Russell Brand. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. Oh boy. We got to talk about him another time. I really appreciate you guys inviting me on. This was actually a great conversation. And you're the first that were actually. You guys are the first ones willing to actually have this conversation. No one else. I've been reaching out. No one else wants to touch it.
Well, we're going to publish this. We hope it helps get you some traction. I know we're not the biggest channel at the moment, but we are passionate and we are going to be growing. So we hope it helps you, and we definitely want to get you on. We'll say, how about we get you on after June, because you've set your deadline for your birthday.
Right.
And, we want to check in and see
that
how
should be interesting.
How you're getting on with
Yeah.
it.